start broadcasting on YouTube too, so that anybody who can't join us will get us there. But my name is Chris May, so thank you so much for coming out to tonight's PyRVA. I've been excited about this one ever since Matt offered to speak at PyRVA again, and then when he told me what he wanted to talk about, I'm like, this sounds amazing. Especially as Matt is getting set up, I wanted to kind of share a couple of things that might not be on your radar. I feel like as one of the things that has really helped me in my progress as a Python developer has been to attend conferences. And so there are a number of conferences coming up. And so I wanted to share a couple. So first off, PyCon is coming up this April, the end of April. It's in Salt Lake City, a very beautiful city, which I'm sure Matt would agree since he lives there. This is one of the most amazing conferences. I was blown away by this. I've been to conferences in other industries and other languages, and they didn't hold a candle to PyCon. So if you have the means to go, or if your company can send you, which is how most people go, I think, I highly recommend going. Additionally, I know that not everybody can fly out to Salt Lake City for a weekend, so I wanted to gather a couple of other conferences that seem really promising. Comp 42 has had some great talks in the past, and I think they could be really great this year. And in fact, if you want to speak at a conference, there's CFP, the call for proposals, are still running, but this is one that I've got on my calendar that I'm looking forward to watching. Additionally, there's the Python Web Conference. This one is, I feel like, where PyCon is the premier Python conference to be in person. I feel like the Python Web Conf is the premier conference to attend virtually. This one is in mid-March, March 13 to 17. It's a half-day conference, though, each of those days, so don't feel like you're taking a whole week off of work. But I attended this one at work, actually, one day, and learned so much that I was able to just apply it immediately. The wonderful thing about this is that it's not specifically web focused. It's just a web conference. And in fact, Matt Harrison and I will be speaking at this conference, which is exciting for me that I get to join the likes of Matt at speaking at a conference. And the people who put on the Python WebConf have been very kind as to send us a coupon. So if you want to save 15% off your ticket price, there's my code is Chris May at PWC 2023. I have no idea that I don't get any kickbacks or anything, so I'm sure Matt Harrison has a very similar code, so you could look his up as well. But I highly recommend going. Try to find a conference that sounds good to you, and I'd love to hear about what you learn and what your experience is once you do that. Additionally, I meant to check earlier. In 2 weeks and a day, we'll be having our coding night. So the fourth Thursday of every month, PyRVA hosts a coding night, and it'll happen right here on Discord. So, keep an ear out and join us, especially if you're trying to pick up some new skills with Python. We'll love to kind of help you out and build some community then. So please come on out. And then finally, the last announcement I have for you today is that the JetBrains, the makers of PyCharm, have sponsored us, and so they have a free 1-year membership to any of their IDEs to give away. So there's a little chat button if you look at the main stage room that you're in. There's a little open chat button right to the right of it if you hover over it. But you can also go into the general channel and type And I keep forgetting it's like, I'm sure somebody's going to help me with this.
Oh, / raffle.
What's that?
You doing the raffle?
Yeah.
It just came into / raffle and then enter, space enter.
Thank you. I
It should
will copy it.
through it if you just.
There we are. I put it in the general and I'll put it here in the chat. So that's all you need to enter. And there's auto complete. So that'll help make things easier for you. Awesome. And we will give away we'll do the raffle at the end of Matt's talk. So at the end of the evening. I think that's about all I have. Let me double check. Yep. So one quick question for you, Matt. Do you want people to ask questions to you in the midst of your talk, or do you want to kind of save towards the end?
Yeah, I'm fine with it being interactive. That's great.
Sounds good. Cool. And I'll monitor YouTube as well, just in case anybody writes a question in there, as well as if you don't feel like or you can't ask a question through a microphone, please put it in the chat and I'll ask Matt for you. With that, I think I have everything I have. And so I'm excited to once again introduce Matt Harrison to PyRVA. He is one of my Python heroes. He's the first person in the Python ecosystem that I followed on Twitter and helped inspire me to leave my job to be a trainer because he's a great trainer. He came to a company I worked for a couple times and I was blown away. So I'm just excited that he's here and I'm excited to see what he's got for us. So Matt, take it away.
Okay, thanks, Chris. That was a very nice intro. It was very kind of you. So a couple things. First of all, I just got a new machine like a month ago, so I went back to Mac from Windows, and my cameras apparently aren't working with Discord, and I'm also not a Discord person. So I hope you can see me. I'm not using the camera that I wanted to use, but I hope you can see me and you can hear me okay. On that note, I would invite you, if you feel so inclined, to turn on your camera. I think it makes for a better presentation if there's faces for me to see and interact with. I get that not everyone can do that, but I would invite you to do that if you can. I found I do a lot of virtual training, and I found that both the instructor and the participant get more out of it with the cameras on. Oh, cool. Yeah, Richard's couch. Awesome. Hey, Richard's couch. Okay, never mind. Richard's couch turned into a face. Thanks everyone for joining me today. Let me see if I can get my screen share here, and let's cross the fingers and roll the dice, and hopefully that works. Can you see my screen?
Sure can.
Okay, very good. Okay, so the impetus of this talk is to, I imagine most of you are familiar with what I'm going to talk about or have some experience with it. It is just to talk about some of these new AIs that are coming out, in particular ChatGPT, but also Copilot. So just by raise of hands, who has heard of ChatGPT? I would expect like the world sort of rotates as everyone raises their hand. Okay. Who has used ChatGPT at least once? Okay. Who has used ChatGPT for work, something work related? Okay, so less hands went up for work related. Okay. Well, yeah. Like Chris said, I'm happy to be here and talk, and like I'm interested in your feedback and comments as well, and would love to hear what you have to say and what your experience is. So a little bit about me. Realize that my font's a little light here, but so this just might help make the context of what I'm going to talk about a little bit clearer. So my background is computer science. I have a CS degree. like Chris says, right now I basically do corporate training, but in the past I've worked. I did my first job was natural language processing back in 2000. Did a bit with some open source company, dabbled in storage and finance and travel industries, and now I'm mostly like to say that I sell snake oil and teach people how to tell lies with data. Um, but I go around to big companies or appear in their browsers or windows and teach Python and data science at Metasnake. So I am the author of multiple books. My most recent book is this Effective Pandas book here. Has anyone heard of this before? Chris? Okay, a few of you have. I, when we do the raffle, remind me and we'll give away a digital copy or two of that too.
Roger that.
Yeah. I also do some consulting as well, but I am basically, I would say, on my own in that, like, currently my employer is Metasnake, right, which is my company, and my ability to make a living is somewhat related to my ability to make noise, which for most introverted, nerdy folks is somewhat like painful, right? Like this marketing side, like how do you do that sort of thing? And so this is my background, and hopefully that helps understand some of my experience. So on the topic of AI, right, I'm not talking about like how to do machine learning or how to implement like a deep neural net here. Rather, this is a talk about how I am using AI to automate myself. And you hear stories of like a 10x engineer or that sort of thing. But I really believe that these like my experience over the past few months with using like Chat GPT has, I don't think it's made me a 10x engineer, but it has made me X, maybe n X engineer, where n is some value greater than one. And so I guess the short version of my talk is that I believe that if you leverage these, you will be more productive. And so that's the short version. So I'm just going to dive into this a little bit. So again, main tools I'm going to talk about is Chat GPT. This comes from a company called OpenAI. GPT, in case you're wondering what that means, it means Generative Pre-trained Transformer. So Transformer is this deep neural net technology. And basically, how a transformer works is at a high level, you have a bunch of text, and it looks at the text and looks when you have said character, or said word, what words come after it, and it is basically able to do prediction of words based on feeding it with some text, right? You feed it with some text, and it says this is the character that or the word that would come after that. That's basically how it's working. And if you feed these transformers enough data, then they can do a relatively good job of like predicting what should come next based on what the input is. And so I'm not going to get into like how many nodes are in the deep neural net, or how GPT-4 is going to be a million times bigger than GPT-3 or that sort of thing. But that's at a high level what's going on there. Now, there's also another tool called Copilot. Has anyone used Copilot? Raise of hand. Okay, not very many. Yeah, I'm kind of an Emacs person, so don't hold that against me. There is like Emacs support for Copilot, but I've also installed VS Code and used Copilot a little bit. And guess what? Copilot is actually built kind of on the same technology. So it's built on this technology called Codex, which is from OpenAI, the same folks who did Chat GPT. So at a 10,000 foot point of view, you're kind of using the same basic thing if you use either one of these. So and I've actually got like Chat GPT here. If you haven't ever like seen it, it's not like anything particularly. Let's see if I can get my screen to show it here. So here's Chat GPT. So I'm working on an app here, and this is like what is the LibreOffice command to convert something to a PDF, right? And so it says like, you can use this and then write this command and do that. And, and I tried that and I said, it failed. So I said, what's the command for Mac? And it says the same thing for Mac. And then I said like, well, I got this error here, and then it says, well, that's because you didn't install it. And it turns out that like I did have it installed, but that wasn't quite correct. There's a different binary that it wasn't finding, but it did a decent job at like telling me what to do. So you kind of have this chat interaction with this website, and it sort of like talks to you. I guess you can sort of consider it like your coding therapist or something like that, or your rubber duck might be a good way to look at it if you're familiar with that term of like rubber duck debugging. And so I asked it, what is ChatGPT? And so this is what it said. It's a large language model developed by OpenAI that uses deep learning to generate human-like text based on the input to it. It's trained on a massive corpus of text data and is capable of performing a wide range of natural language processing tasks such as text generation, conversation response, sentiment analysis, and it has the potential to significantly enhance the efficiency, accuracy of various AI-powered applications, particularly in industries such as customer service, marketing, and finance. Okay. So that's, I think, a decent description of it. And so, some of these things you might be interested in. Like from my point of view, kind of like that marketing might be interesting, but like the ability to just spit out text is pretty interesting from my point of view. So here's my definition. I like to give a definition. Discord says that my stream is still running, but it's paused the preview. Do I have to do something to that?
You're okay.
Okay. So it looks like it's going. Okay. So I would describe ChatGPT as a smart friend who has read a lot of books or content, but is not afraid to lie to you. Okay. And like you just saw, I asked it how to do something, and it said, this is how you do it. And it was kind of the truth. And I said, no, it's not. And it said, okay, install it, which it was installed. And I ended up doing another search and finding out, a few clicks into that search, what the correct incantation of that command was. But it got me down the path pretty far. But this is a key point that you need to be aware of, is that this technology, how its current incarnation will tell you with strong conviction things that are straight out lies or not true. So you need to be careful with that. So I went, and what I did was I've used ChatGPT since December, and if you go to the website there, you can actually look at your old prompts. So what I did was I went through a lot of the old prompts that I've used, and I just want to sort of give you an overview of some of the prompts and some of the pros and cons of the things that I've done with it. So at a high level, you can use this to write code. You can use it to test code. You can use it to comment code. You can use it to explain code. You can use it to refactor code, and you can use it to even deploy code. It's not going to deploy it for you, but it will give you the commands to deploy it. So has anyone ever had a frustrating time doing any of these things? Yeah. And one of the reasons why is because a lot of these tasks are tasks that consume a lot of our brain power, right? And so if you think about maybe your capacity is like a mug that has, your brain power capacity is like a mug that has some amount of juice in it. When we're working on something, we're consuming that juice, and then we're sort of out of juice and it's hard to do things. Um, I once heard a Google employee say that like the reason that Google offered breakfast, lunch, and dinner at Google was, according to their studies, the average programmer works for like 3 hours a day, and the output of that 3 hours is like 10 lines of code. So if you look at like industry average of code, you're writing 10 lines of code per day in like 3 hours, and that's kind of like, people can say they work for 16 hours a day or whatnot, but they're going to burn out. But, so Google's thing was like, if we can eke out like an extra 2 lines of code from that, right? 20% increase, it totally pays for like doing your laundry, giving you lunch and dinner, just by getting that like 20% more output from you, right? And so I'm sort of seeing this as like not my laundromat, but if I am engaged in these tasks that use a lot of my brain power or consume it, can I sort of ask the AI to do these tasks for me, right? And then I can use my brain power on higher level things. And so I think that somewhat addresses this notion that a lot of folks have that AI is going to take over programming, or it's going to take my job. I don't think that's the case, but I think that a lot of jobs might look different in the near future, right? In that how we perform them and what we do will be different. And so at least right now, my goal is to sort of explore this notion and see where I can leverage it to make my life easier and to sort of lower the cognitive burden on myself by doing a lot of the tasks that I commonly do. So emails, it can write emails for you. Like something that I think would be pretty cool. Apparently Google announced yesterday that they have this thing called Bard that's coming out, and Google is in a position where like they potentially know more about you than anyone else, like including those who live with you, right? If you think about it, they could, if they were like wanting to do like a dating service, it seems like they could pretty easily like just say like, here's 10 people you should date, and you would have pretty good success with them because we know what people like and we know how people get divorced, and these kind of people don't get divorced or something like that, right? They could make a model that does that relatively easily based on the data that they have about you. And so like for me, it'd be kind of nice if I got an email to like, it takes effort for me to like read an email, respond to it. Is this important for me to respond to? If it's not important for me to respond to, like, when do I respond to it? Chris knows that sometimes I don't respond to emails in the most timeliest manner. So it'd be really cool if, like, instead of like me having to do all that mental juggling of responding to emails, I just sort of at the end of the day say, okay, we're going to spend like 2 minutes doing the email overview, right? And it just comes up and says, here's the emails that you got. These ones were spam. These ones are the most important. And I filled in the response to them based on your responses to past emails. And it looks like you're writing because that's how you wrote them. And you can either approve that or go in and edit that. These ones, are maybe not as important, but I've also pre-filled those in again. And these ones like are maybe mischaracter, like there's a lot of Matt Harrisons in the world, so I get a lot of like not necessarily spam, but a lot of like, hey, thanks for signing up for this, or thanks for buying this car, here's the information about your car, sorts of things, or like here's your doctor's appointment, where it's not really spam, but it's like I have to send them an email that says like, please double check the Matt Harrison email because this is not the Matt Harrison you're looking for, sort of thing. So it'd be cool to like sort of outsource that completely, right? Or somewhat completely, or at least instead of me taking an hour going through doing all that, I can do that in 2 minutes. That's a pretty huge gain for me to do something like that, right? And right now it's not integrated to that point. But like I could see Google having a product or someone else having a product that did that. That would be a huge time saver. Another thing is like conference talks. So Chris just mentioned like a bunch of conferences that are coming in, and like I'm biased, but like my experience is that like speaking at conference talks generally is a good thing for you, but they're kind of a pain to apply to. And well, there is like one service where you can like store your conference proposals, but not everyone uses those, and so people have different formats, and you know I've already got a talk that I've given somewhere else. It takes a little bit of time to like reformat it. Well, what you can do with chat, you can say like, here's a proposal. I want you to reformat it in this way, right? And it will do that. Um, and if you don't have an existing proposal, you can actually ask it to write an outline, and it will do that. You can say write an outline for this. And I've actually done this, and don't tell anyone, but I've gotten conference talks that have been approved that have been written by ChatGPT. And I'm like, okay, that looks, I'm happy to talk about that. And it was like, again, for me, it was like, could I have written that? Yeah, I could have. Would what I have written be better? I mean, it might have been, but it's going to take me an hour or two to write it. This took me like 2 minutes to write, right? And so for me, that's a huge like cognitive load release, and just allows me to like move things off my plate really easily. Another thing is just like the general notion of like generating ideas, and like this may or may not be as applicable to a lot of you, but in my role, in addition to doing programming consulting, I'm also having to do content generation, because that's how I kind of view my marketing, right? Is to provide useful content for people, and then they say that, oh, this person knows about pandas or Python. Oh, they also do corporate training. Maybe we should get Matt in and have him come in here because the things he's teaching we're not really finding other places, that sort of thing. And so again, that ability to create content is it can take a long time. Like one of the clients I work with, I write blog posts for them, and like writing a long blog post, it just takes time. And so, or even coming up with ideas for blog posts can take time. And so a lot of times I've found, like as a content person, and I think this is somewhat similar to programming, or at least a lot of people say this idea is like just staring at that blank page or that blank editor is like, I'm going to go whatever, check sports or whatever. There's nothing there. I don't know where to start, sort of thing, right? And you can like ask ChatGPT, like list 20 ideas for content about whatever topic, and it will spit out 20 ideas. And some of them might not be great, but some of them might be decent, right? And then you can say, okay, let's pick one of those and say, give me an outline for a blog on that, right? And it will do that. And you've probably seen, if you've been paying attention to the news, like all of these scare tactics of, the college essay is dead, that sort of thing, right? And if you look at ChatGPT, I mean, you can ask it to write a 5-paragraph college essay on whatever topic, and it's going to do I would say, a better job than 80% of high school students would do, right? And so, so it can do a decent job of like creating content, and so again, people are, some people on one side are like concerned about that because that's going to put them out of a job. I don't know how many people like to have the job of like writing essays for college, but people who are like writing books or whatever, they're like, oh, this is horrible if you're using AI to write a book, because that's going to put authors out of a job. So as someone who writes books and writes other things, like I have used ChatGPT to write emails, help with blogs. I'm writing a new book. I'm writing a book about XGBoost right now, and sometimes like it's being reviewed by my editors right now, and some people are saying like, you need to fill this out, I'd like another paragraph here, and I'm like, you know what, I'll ask the chat to do that for me, and like write 2 sentences to explain this, and it does it, and I might edit that, right, or I might change it around, but it's just like I can just push that off and not have to like burden myself with it, and it does a really good job. And another thing that's really nice about it is like I can load up like the chapter and say like write 5 exercises for this, and in 20 seconds it will write 5 exercises for it. Are all of them great? No, not necessarily, right? Some of them might be not great, but it would take me probably half hour to an hour to do that, right? And this is doing that in 20 seconds. So, and again, social media as well, right? If you write some tweets ideas or some LinkedIn posts, it will do that for you. So again, my take on that is that as someone who's creating content, either code or written word, that takes a strain on my brain. And using this technology is a huge like delegation technique, right? Where I can delegate that, but I also like save a ton of time by doing that. So I'm gonna, for those of you who haven't played around with ChatGPT, I'm gonna just go into some examples that I've done, which may or may not be slightly humorous. Can you see my screen, or is it still? Does it say GPT example?
Yeah, we can see your screen. It only doesn't show you if you are in Discord.
Okay.
To kind of save bandwidth or something like that.
Okay. So I'll just read. So in December I was messing around with this, writing Christmas songs, and so this is my basic idea, right? So it can write songs. You can tell it to write like call and response type songs. You can tell it to talk about certain topics. You can styles, and it will even like insert guitar chords for you. I've even had it. So I was helping our church like format some music, and it will. There's a lily pond format. It's like LaTeX for like music nerds, and it will like write out this lily pond format, which is like, if you don't like LaTeX, you won't like this either. It's like horrible, but it will do it for you, right? And so that's like a huge time saver. So here's my input. It's like, write a Christmas song about a reindeer who ran over the neighbor, and then the other neighbor, and then your mom, and then your grandpa, and then have 7 different verses of this reindeer running over people and things. And then in the final verse, have the reindeer come and knock on your door and like apologize for all the havoc that it's caused. And then it did that, and then I'm rewrite that previous song as if it were verses from the book of Revelation, right? And so, and I saw in the mist of the night a reindeer running wild with all its might. It trod through the streets with reckless abandon and ran over the neighbor with a thud and a slam. And so, I mean, it does this, and it was just fun to like play around. That was sort of my initial like, let's see what this thing can do, right? And I was like, oh, that's actually, I mean, is it the world's greatest verses or whatever? No, not necessarily, but like, again, it gets stuff out there relatively well. So here's some more prompts that I've done. I'm not going to show the output for this, but maybe just make some commentary on it. What are the 20 best questions to ask and evaluate during a year-end interview for content creators? So this is sort of like my own therapist or whatever, right? Or like my own like what, and it came back with great questions, right? And it's like, oh, that I should probably consider that, right? Write a scikit-learn class that allows setting the threshold on the classifier model. Something that I was doing for my book, and it spit out the code to do it, right? And the code worked. Here's another one. Write this pandas code in a non-chain style. So I took someone's pen, or I took my pandas code. So those of you who know me for pandas know that I espouse this style of pandas. It's called chaining, where you write everything as like a step after a step. And so that tends to drive people crazy, and they're always like, write it in a better way than that. And I'm like, to me, that's the best way to write it. And so I'm sort of devil's advocate, rewrote it in their way, but I have the chat do it instead of me. So I took my code and then I like wrote it in their way, how they said that they should write it, right? And then break out any assign method into index assignments, so it did that. And then someone was saying like I had all these magic numbers in my code, so I said like pull out the magic numbers or magic literals and put those in variables, and it did that, right? And then someone was saying you don't have any documentation, so I said like write a documentation, and I also said add type information to it, so it put in like a doc string and then actually put in the Python 3 type annotations. And then I said write 3 tests using PyTest for this, and it did that. And then it also had this other function that it was referring to, but it wasn't implemented. And I said like implement this function that it really didn't know. I mean, I didn't think it knew what it was, but it actually went out and implemented this function for me, and did the right thing for it. So this is kind of, again, showing you like you can do some cool stuff with this. And you know, one thing that a lot of coders have issues with is like coming to code, like legacy code, and like what is this code doing, right? And so I see technology like this as a huge game changer, where you can say like summarize what this code is doing, right? Or if people are like, I hate your code because you don't ever put comments in it, you can say here's the code, ask ChatGPT to throw in some comments in there, and it will throw in some comments in there, and generally it does a pretty good job. Here's another one that's a little more on the funny side. Create a mashup of Jim Carrey's The Grinch, Avatar, and Downton Abbey. So, I mean, this is just kind of weird, but so it made like this outline for this mashup of this really silly story. And then I'm like, have the Grinch indoctrinate the Pandora people about the benefits of upstairs and downstairs culture, and also make some of the people get COVID. And it had this weird story about Downton Abbey with the Grinch and Avatar, and it knew what these things were, right? Have the Grinch fuse his head with Pandora wildlife to connect with the natural network of the planet. And so it had something about how the Grinch went in and did that connection thing when they're have the Grinch fall in love with Edith on Pandora, but Mary stops them before joining the natural network. Have Mary betray Matthew and fall in love with Bates and his club foot. Have the Grinch enter Downton Abbey through the chimney and try and steal the presents, and make Sidney Lou travel to Pandora with the Dowager Countess. So if you're not familiar with all those things, that might be a little bit weird, but it came up with like this really weird story about like all these things happening, and I thought it was like an interesting exercise in like creativity, and sort of, again, that notion of like getting something down there. Like if you were like maybe writing some play and you're like, oh, we want to do a spoof on these things. It's like, this sort of gives you something to get started with, right? Or at least play around with, and then you can like riff on that. Write doc strings and comments for this code. Again, understanding code and just sticking in doc strings. It does an excellent job of that. Someone had a tweet thread about like how to do feature engineering, and it was like, if this, do this, if this, do this, but it was a thread. I copied the thread, put it in there, and said make a GraphViz flowchart of that, and it spit out GraphViz code. I threw it through Dot. GraphViz is a language for doing flowcharts, and it made a chart of that tweet thread, right? Of like, if this, do this, if that, do that. Describe the optimal home office setup for a content creator. Again, like just sort of playing around with it, messing around with it. Write a cheat sheet for the 10 most common poetry commands and getting started. Did a decent job if you're familiar with poetry of doing that. That tends to be sort of everyone's favorite pain. Write a pulled pork recipe for Instant Pot. It did that. Write a 3D scatter plot with Plotlate. So I'm very familiar with Matplotlib and pandas. Occasionally I'll use Plotlate because I want interactivity. And it's like, okay, rather than searching on Google, I'll just ask this to do it. The nice thing about this is that it will give you some context, and then it will also spit out some code generally. And it gave me code. The code worked. And then I said, how do you color it based on another column? Gave me some other code that I put in there. How do I save that as a PNG? Gave me some other code, and that worked as well. Right. And so this I've read comments that, like, this makes Google very scared, because if I'm searching, and if some of you are from Google, you don't have to like comment or anything, but like, if I have this technology, potentially I don't have to search anymore, right? And this can do a better job and give me better answers. Okay, so this one is particularly interesting to me as an educator. So I do a fundamentals of Python course. This is a course that I would do for most of my clients when they're starting out, just to fill in knowledge gaps and make sure that they understand Python. And at the end of that course, we do a little project where we make a Markov chain, which is a little tool that you kind of like a really dumb chat GPT. You train it and then it spits out text based on what it was trained with. But it's a fun little project because it explains it uses a lot of the basic data structures of Python. And so I've done this exercise probably, I don't know, 100 times with different classes or whatnot, right? So I kind of know this code from the back of my hand. I can like do it in my sleep, that sort of thing. So I'm like, let's see if I can like ask chat to do this for me. The prompt, this session will be about creating a Python program to create Markov chains. That went off and like, here's what Markov chains are for you if you didn't understand. How do I create the project directory and layout for the Python project? It told me how to do that, right? Make a bash script to generate it for me. I said, okay, throw this into the bash script. Okay, now I can just put that into a bash script, and if someone else wanted to use that, they could. And then I wanted to refactor some of the bash script, so I said make the my project a bash variable so I can change the name. It did that. Here's a new bash script with that refactored in it. And then I started off with my code of my project, write a function called getTable that accepts a Python string and returns a dictionary mapping each character to a dictionary of characters following it with their associated counts. So this is this notion of a transition table where the data structure that says, if I train this with the world is great, it says the thing that comes after the is world, and world came after the one time, right? But if it said the world is great, the world, then it would say world came after the 2 times, right? The idea being that like if I type in the, it would say world is a good candidate for something to come after the. And it did that, right? I said write a unit test for getTable, it did that. I said use the string abacab for the test. It did that. It did not work, but it attempted to do, like, the test actually didn't test the right thing. Create a setup.py for the project, that worked. Create a PyProject TOML file, that worked. Write a make file with the actions, that worked. Add help to the make file so it prints out the commands, that worked. And then I went into some stuff about poetry, just because like that's again the perennial issue. But like for me, in the course of about 2 hours of messing around with this, I was able to recreate probably more than what I do generally with my fundamentals class, all basically through prompting, right? And so with a little bit of nudging, you can do that. Now, one of the open questions to me is like, I'm saying, am I throwing my cognitive brain power into creating prompts, right? Is that like expending more energy, that prompt creation, than the energy that I would have done if I just would have written it out on my own, right? And especially if the prompt or chat sends you sort of down a rabbit hole and it starts lying to you, and then you're like debugging it. It might not be a time saver, right? It might be a time sink in that case. So another thing that you might want to be aware of, like up to this point, like most of my prompts were like single line question sort of things. But there's this notion of mega prompts. So that's, instead of just a single line question, you're sort of providing like the who, what, where, when, how sort of thing here. And I'll show an example of like what a mega prompt would look like. In this case, you're coding, you're basically, and again, it's going to like, there was kind of a bit of effort to making these mega prompts if you're typing them out every time. I actually don't type them out every time. I actually have a file that has a bunch of prompts in them because I reuse those, and because ChatGPT tends to time out or kick me out, and I don't want to type in a mega prompt again. They say like name it, tell it who it is, and tell it how it responds. So, I mean, this says you're Fred, an AI for creating LinkedIn social media posts. Your task is to accept a description and draft a social media post. You'll be given an idea or some code. We want to maximize sharing in social media. These are the steps. Say ready and ask what tasks needs a post. Create 2 different social media posts. These are the constraints. These will be written as paragraphs. You can also provide bullet lists. You can include emojis. You can include a call to action. The final result should be easy to read, skim, and review. It should not have any significant errors or be tedious. And when you're ready, say ready. After you acknowledge you're ready, I'll provide you with the first line of text. Do not start yet. The text may need to be sent in multiple parts. Wait and do nothing until I say go. Right, and so in this case, I'm not. I'm asking it a question kind of, but I'm more interacting with it. I'm kind of programming it and saying this is what I want you to do. And these mega prompts can get even more complex than that, where you say like, and here's a sample of what input might look like, and here's what I want the output to look like, sort of thing. I found that you often get better results once you start going down like this mega prompt route, especially if you want more customized content. If I'm doing like book summarization or exercise creation, that sort of thing, than just a single question there. So again, I have used Copilot just a little bit. Like I said, I just changed my computer from Windows to Mac, and one of the things that I do for some of my courses is that I show slides and then I draw on the slides, and one of the pains that I've had is that it's always like I haven't really found an app on any platform that I like for letting me draw on PDFs in the way I want to. And so like the infamous programmer, I should have thought of this a long time ago, but like I want to go paint my bike shed pink sort of thing. And so this is actually a place where you can use AI to do this. And I've used Copilot and ChatGPT. My output right now is not perfect. I'm not using it for this slideshow, but I'm hoping to get it done relatively soon. But like I asked these tools, like write a Qt PySide 6 example of loading a PDF in a file, right, and displaying it, and it gives me the boilerplate. So I don't have, again, it gets over that blank slate and getting something out onto the page, right? And the code worked. And then I wanted to be able to draw pictures on it, so I said write PySide 6 code that lets me draw on an image, and spit out code that did that, right? And then I wanted to like highlight it and move it around. It spit out code that did that. Kind of the more painful part was when I needed to start integrating these things together. Then you sort of need to understand a little bit more about the Qt library and make sure that like the code that it's generating actually will allow you to do that. But it's done a decent job of doing that. And is that more efficient than me like going through the Qt libraries and like sort of creating this from scratch? Yeah, probably. Like I've used Qt, but like the last time I used Qt was like maybe 15 years ago, right? So it's all sort of, I don't remember hardly any of it. The signals and slots is about the only thing I remember from Qt days back then. But again, this let me like relatively quickly like get a decent thing up and going, right? And like after I went through that, I'm like, I should have done this like years ago, just written it, not even with chat, but like just written my own tool, because none of the tools out there, like pay for tools, like kind of do what I want. I want to talk a little bit about ethics. That seems to be something that a lot of people are concerned with. So first of all, like I'm not a lawyer here, so take that for what it is. People are like, is it cheating to use these things? So I am an author, right? I've written multiple books, and like when someone steals my content and like pastes it in, or like uh, and I've seen this like in social media, like I'll do a tweet or I'll do a LinkedIn post or an image, and people will like wholesale take it and not credit. And that's, to me, that's like super frustrating. Like as someone who does content creation for a living, that someone would come in and just take your content without giving you credit, right? And so maybe it's a little bit hypocritical, but I'm like, but I use this tool, right? I use this tool, and there is a class action lawsuit against Copilot right now, right? The idea that like this content has been trained on code that has various libraries, like GPL library, which is viral in nature. And if you're using that on proprietary software, like what's the legal precedent for that? And we don't know. Like the answer is we don't know right now, right? Like I said, there's a lawsuit going out there, so that might be some sort of gray ground. It's not exactly clear what this has been trained on. It's also not clear like what it means like for an AI to generate something, right? I know that like some of these image generation people have been upset where they find like a Getty images like watermark in it, right? Or like someone's signature, someone's found like their signature on like some weird drawing that they didn't draw, but it's like it stole my signature sort of thing. So there are some cases there that are like, people need to, I guess, sort that out. Here's my take, and I'm not saying that this is the only take, right? But like, we now use calculators in math, right? Before we didn't use calculators, or at some point, like calculators were considered illegal. You had to learn how to use like a slide rule, that sort of thing, right? And so, I mean, you can ask Chat GPT, you can say like, what did math look like before calculators were used, right? And it will give you what it says is the history. I'm not sure if that is the case or not, right? I didn't research it a lot, but we have sort of moved past that, and people could say that like, well, if you're using a calculator, you're not memorizing this, you're not doing the work, the calculator is doing the work. Yeah, I mean, but most of us in here are programmers. We're using programs to do work for us, right? So programmers by their nature are lazy, right? And I don't want to do anything that can get the computer to do for me. So I sort of see this as a continuation of that. Other justifications, at least in my mind, like I use a spell checker. Spell checker is kind of a very simplistic AI. I also use a tool called Grammarly. Anyone use Grammarly, right? Like I make typos all the time, and that like saves me, right? It saves me a lot of time to do that. Word processors have, some of them have fancy AI. Gmail has some completion AI in it. And so I'm kind of using these technologies that are, I would say, like embryonic versions of ChatGPT, right? Already. And I don't necessarily feel guilty about that or feel like a need, like I need to credit Grammarly for that, or my spell checker for that. There are some people who say like, if ChatGPT helped you write a paper, you should like list them as an author in like an academic format or something. I mean, maybe yeah. I will say this. I generally, when I'm creating content from chat, I don't wholesale take the content. Generally, I'm editing the content from it, but I'm using it as I would say, a starting point, oftentimes. Okay, so in conclusion here, hopefully I've like sold you of some of the benefits of this, at least from my point of view. Like these technologies can save you a lot of time. I would advise you to get comfortable with prompting and maybe try some of these mega prompts out. it's going to be interesting to see as like right now the user interface is kind of a pain, right? Like I said, it'd be really nice if I could just open my email and just have this like thing that I can just go through, right? Like right now, to respond to an email, I need to go into my email, copy the thing out, paste it in there, and also throw in a prompt on top of it, and then go back and forth, which is kind of a pain. Copilot makes that a little bit nicer in that like you write comments in VS Code and then it tends to complete them, it kind of. Again, this is not afraid to lie or tell you mistruths, and so that might be problematic. So that leads me to my next point, is that I believe that this helps subject matter experts more than beginners. And so people said, like, isn't this going to get rid of programmers? I don't think so. Because if I don't know like the basics of programming, this is generating code for me, I can have it generate this code, but who knows if I'm like pushing it down a rabbit hole or just making a really bad program. If I'm an expert, I can just tell it to do these things, and then I can come back and like look at what it's done and make sure that it's done the right thing, right? And that's the part of optimizer augmenting my output there, where for example, with pandas code, I can go in there and check it really easily, or Python code, and just check that it makes sense, right? And you can also have it write tests, and you can run those tests and validate it that way. Another thing I think that this is sort of my prediction, or what I'm seeing in the future, is this is going to push a lot of us towards more of an editing role rather than a creation role, right? Where if you have the ability to edit either code or prose, that might be something that we find ourselves doing a little bit more, because the act of creating that, if we find it draining or hard or time consuming, the act of editing might be a little bit more efficient for us. And if you are a subject matter expert, oftentimes that is a huge time saver. Okay, so that is what I had. Apologize for just sort of dumping my brain out here, but hopefully, did anyone learn anything out here? Is this useful? Okay, cool. Chris, do we have any questions or comments? I haven't been tracking any.
Oh, pardon me. I unmute myself to cough. Yeah. There have been a couple that happened in chat. Nothing on YouTube at the moment. So let me scroll back up.
Is that in forum or help or?
It was in the main stage chat, which is kind of hidden, unfortunately. So let's see here.
There should be a chat icon at the top of your window that is like showing the group.
Oh yeah, top right corner. Okay. Man.
Okay, yeah. Okay. There it is. 81. Okay.
What makes Chat GPT different from other chat AI bots?
Okay, yeah. So let me find where that is here. Okay, yeah. So Richard, what makes ChatGPT different from other AI bots? I mean, GPT, this like GPT-3 has been out for a while, so you know, I know some people have been using it for content generation, not with chat, but with just other content for a while. I think what makes chat different is that barrier to entry, right? If you look at like the numbers, and I'm not sure what they are, but some people have said that these might be exaggerated or whatnot, but like chat got to like 1 million users in 5 days, which is like the fastest growing app ever, like, or fastest uptake ever. So I think it's like I can just go there and just start typing stuff in. I don't have to use an API or anything, and it just gives me back stuff. And it's sort of like Excel. Like I like to say, like Excel is like most popular programming environment in the world, and people are like, what does that even mean? Well, I mean, out of the box, you can teach like third graders how to do simple programs in Excel, like add numbers and add columns, right? That doesn't necessarily mean that it's great for doing programming per se, but a lot of the world runs by Excel, and that out of the box is really easy with Excel versus like Python. I mean, Python is more powerful, but in 5 minutes you can't do what you can do in Excel in 5 minutes. So I think the chat part of GPT is that interface that makes that really easy to use. The GPT part, again, this is just using a transformer technology, but I would say like what makes the GPT part interesting. I mean, the estimates are like training costs, I think, were like $100 million or some crazy amount to like train the model, right? And so this is not something that your average person is going to be able to do just like on the weekend, right? Like make a model that's trained on the quantity of content that this is trained on. Let's see. Okay, so Todd says it writes regexes now. Yeah, so like things that like are a pain, regular expressions tend to be a perennial thorn in people's sides. Explaining regular expressions can do that. So you can give it a regular expression. You can ask it to write a test for a regular expression. You can ask it to like explain in English what a expression would do. You can ask it to create a regular expression for you. Yeah, Richard says Google stock dropped. Yeah, I mean, apparently like Google's announcement of this Bard, which is basically their chat GPT thing, is sort of like people are like, and again, I'm not a quant or anything, but like my understanding is like people are like, what's going to happen with search, right? Is the bottom going to fall out of that? Okay, used it to write an annual performance review of the Raincore by Jabba the Hutt. I love it. I was going to say something about the Boba Fett show that was disappointing, but I'll not say that. Okay, yeah, I expect us to be in IDEs before long, especially Visual Studio. I mean, Copilot is in there, right? And there is a plugin for Chat GPT in there. And again, the Copilot and Chat GPT are kind of running on the same technology, or at least very related technology. Do you have an idea of, Geo says, do you have an idea of how often the data is retrained? My understanding is that ChatGPT goes up to like 2021. So if you ask it questions about certain events after that, it either lies or doesn't know certain things, like the Queen of died, that sort of thing. Todd says it's not a better search that scares Google, it's the lack of showing ads that scares them. Well, okay, yeah, you can think that, you know, certainly you could inject ads in there into the content, right? I mean, they could just like, here's the prompt, and Google's just going to post append into the prompt, like, oh, and also show 5 products that are related to this from our search engine, right? You could imagine them doing something like that, but yeah. It'll be interesting to see what happens there. Along the lines of calculators making people lazy, I wonder if Google AI progressed to the point where their programmers got lazy. Yeah, I'm going to zip my mouth and not say anything about that one there. Microsoft Word seems to be experimenting with text prediction. I started getting them yesterday while working on an assignment. Yeah, apparently Bing and Edge yesterday or the day before announced that they have chat or some relative of chat integrated in there where you can start doing some prompting in there that's a little bit more context sensitive. So I think, you know, if, like I said, the user interface right now is kind of a pain, right? I mean, it's kind of like copy and paste, yank stuff around. If you, which makes it easy for just experimenting, but like using it in like Emacs or like Other tooling like Twitter or LinkedIn, those sorts of things is kind of a pain right now. But if someone can get that user interface, clicked in where it makes it super efficient, I think those are some places where you can. There's some low-hanging fruit right now. Let's see. Todd says it's not much worse than just going to Stack Overflow and copying and pasting code. Yeah. People copy and paste from Stack Overflow all the time. Adam says Copilot doesn't give you the best practices sometimes. Yeah. So on that point, Adam, like I said, like with chat, and I haven't tried this with Copilot, but with chat, like I can say like rewrite this. So I've done stuff where I've said like I'm writing some pandas code, and then with pandas you can call out to functions to like do operations that are a little bit hard in pandas. And so like I've said like rewrite that into NumPy style. It's done that. I've said rewrite this using Numba, which is a library that will optimize your code. It's been able to do that. So one of the nice things about that interactive style is that like I can sort of go back and forth and say like change this, refactor this, right? And I showed that prompt series where I kind of went through and like basically went from what I thought was my good code to someone else's good code, right? And so you can go through that ability to inject your best practices if you want to. And I can see a future where you have these fine-tuned models that are trained on your best practices or coding conventions, right? Where it not only knows generic code out there in the world, but it's been tuned on your code base. And when you do something, it will tell you like, hey, don't do that right there because that's not going to work, sort of thing. QQ Alfred says maybe Copilot would be better for creating the scaffolding and test room development, and then you do the rest by filling in the methods. Yeah, I mean, it kind of does both decently, or at least GPT does. I haven't messed around with Copilot, but GPT chat does. I think is decent at both and a time saver at both. Macro says chat's also good at writing user stories and breaking down large IPICs. Glenn says my experience with chat is that if you get a multi-paragraph answer, you have to be careful and analyze what it says. Its voice sounds very authoritative, but its answers are often self-contradictory. Yeah, and so again, I do think you want to be a subject matter expert and have that ability to go through and edit, right? I'd be very careful just like taking something wholesale from chat right now. Macro Mike says there's things like Dan mode, do anything now, takes off nanny filters. I have seen errors in regular expressions. Yeah. So again, these technologies are not perfect. But I think they're at a state where they're super useful. Let's see, Ayak says, do you think that programmers, when using chat, need to work hard to make sure that whatever chat provides is accurate? Because I see chat causing some individuals to blindly believe in chat. I mean, I hope I've made this clear that like it's your friend who's read a lot and not afraid to lie to you, and that you need to be a subject matter expert. You need to be comfortable editing, and you can ask it to write tests, but if you don't know what the code is doing, writing tests sort of doesn't make sense, right? So again, I don't. From my point of view, and maybe this is like self-serving because like I make my living like teaching people how to program, right? If someone didn't know how to program and they just went off and like created some weird application with chat, I'd be a little bit weary of that because it might be doing things that are not optimal or just weird, right? So certainly could give them the ability to do that, but I would just be careful with that, right? Someone who thinks that they're going to get away with like having PMs just like prompt app creation. I don't see that happening right now. Okay. I think that is all of the comments that we have so far. Any other
Absolutely.
comments?
And there's no more on YouTube either. So I tell you what, why don't we go ahead and do the PyCharm giveaway, and we'll do a new giveaway for the for your book.
Cool.
So
And then I made a code PyRVA. If anyone is interested in effective pandas, you can go to metastake.com, my store there, and get it for 20% off.
nice, awesome, that's great. So if you are interested in the PyCharm giveaway, here's your warning. Just type /raffle space enter and in one of the chats, and we've got 3 people entered right now. So I'll give you a couple more seconds to enter that. Excellent. I'm going to see if anybody else is typing. Here we are. Now I'm getting. All right. Got a few people coming in. Excellent. All right. So let's see. Let's go ahead and end it in 3, 2, 1. And the cool one. Wow, he just entered and he won. That's excellent. Now, everybody who has entered into the PyCharm giveaway will still be entered into the effective pandas. But go ahead and, if you aren't in there, go ahead and add yourself now, just by typing /raffle space enter. Well, Matt, thank you so much for this. This has been such an interesting conversation, or I guess it's monologue, but it felt like a conversation. So it's such an interesting topic.
Hopefully I inspired some people who maybe haven't tried it to look at it, or given some new ideas about some prompts that might help.
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, I've barely scratched the surface, so you've definitely inspired me to look into it and give it a try. And you've definitely sparked people into entering this raffle for your book.
I already have a copy of it, so not that I can enter the raffle anyway.
All right, well, let's see. Let's wait just a couple more seconds to do the raffle. All right. I don't see anybody else typing. So let's see who wins. Oh, wrong command.
Them the rules, Chris. Them the rules.
I am on top of this, let me tell you. Jasmine, all right, excellent. So I'll work with you, Matt, to
Okay.
distribute. You might be able to DM her, and that's awesome. Great. Oh, that's all I have for tonight too. But just because we're out of content that are pre-prepared, we are open to chat. Matt, thanks for your talk, and feel free to hang out as long as you like, or
Okay.
take off. But you know what? Let me stop YouTube too, so that